I'm so excited for today's podcast. We have Pamela Alcorn of Alcorn Insurance Agency based in New Mexico. I can't wait for her to share the story that she has. Once I was introduced to her and I started to hear her story, I was like, wow, if I was an agent on the other side, this is exactly what I would want to know and hear. So I want to introduce to you today Pamela Alcorn. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Coffee Talk.
Hey, LaDonna, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, how about you kind of share a little bit of your story? You were in Arkansas and Oklahoma, and how your family came to having an insurance agency in New Mexico.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So basically, I'm from Oklahoma, born and raised in farm country. Anybody who knows Oklahoma might know about Arcadia. It's a little town with a round barn. A lot of people go there to see that. It's kind of a sight. And like I shared with you, LaDonna, my grandparents were from Arkansas. That's where my mom grew up in Waldron. So I spent a lot of time down there. And you were just talking about not having very many tornadoes and kind of being tornado free for a while. I'm very familiar with that. We had a cellar. My granddad would take my sister and I down to the cellar if it even looked like there was going to be a tornado. He'd just leave my mom and my grandmother and say, you guys can stay here if you want, but I'm taking my grandkids. Always very fond memories of fishing and going to Piggly Wiggly and all that kind of stuff. And then grew up in Oklahoma. And my sister and I were fortunate enough to grow up. Didn't think we were fortunate at the time to grow up out in the middle of nowhere in farm country. But as we got older, we realized that that was really a blessing because we could just take off and go horseback riding. We could go walking. There were no cell phones. My mother didn't worry about us much, I don't guess. I'm not sure. Maybe she was happy we stayed gone all day and we couldn't call. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Had a really good childhood memories. Fast forward a little bit, actually went to school in Edmond, graduated from Oklahoma Christian School. So a little shout out to them. I think they're still there in the Edmond area, OCS. Met my husband let me see, it's been a long time ago, but met my husband in 85. We were married in 86, or no, we met in 84, married in 85. In 86, we had a daughter, our oldest. We've got 3 daughters. Oldest daughter's Christina. So I worked out of high school, worked for a dry cleaner there. Then I worked for an eye surgeon, Dr. Widener. So anybody in Oklahoma City that's older might remember Dr. Widener. I know he has since moved away, and I think he's actually passed away, but his wife is still around. But great folks, learned a lot of great work ethic from my parents. We're working for Dr. Widener's office, working with people. My husband, we got married, my husband and his dad had a State Farm office in Edmond, Oklahoma. And it was, I believe, the largest State Farm agency in the Southwest region. If you would have asked me then what I knew about insurance, it would have been like, I think my husband carries it and we have it on our car. I'm pretty sure we might have our house insured. I don't know. Had a baby, decided to stay home and raise my kids and be a stay-at-home mom. Well, in 87, my father-in-law decided to retire. He'd been with State Farm about 32, 33 years, and my husband had about 15 years in. And he was actually the youngest State Farm agent that State Farm had ever hired. My husband was when he joined State Farm. So kind of a little story there. So in 87, we came to northern New Mexico, which my husband and his family used to come up here. It's on the northern New Mexico and southern Colorado border up here in Chama. A little tiny town. If you look it up on the map, you'll barely see it there. So we came up here. He wanted to retire. My father-in-law did retire to northern New Mexico in the mountains. And I've loved the mountains. My other set of grandparents that were from Oklahoma, we came to the mountains all the time. So we came up here, looked around. My oldest daughter was maybe 5 or 6 weeks old at that point. And I fell in love with it because, like I say, it would come with my grandparents. I love the mountains. So when there's a lot to be said for being young and not knowing a lot, because when we decided to move up here, I told my husband, he goes, do you want to move to the mountains? I was like, oh yeah, we can do this. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. So when the oldest one was 7 months old, took us about 7 months, we found a place and we moved up here. And like I say, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband was like, I'm done with insurance. I've done it since I was 15, 14, working in my dad's office. I'm going to do something else. So he goes out and gets his real estate license. And I'm one of those, I'm just like, you go, hon, whatever you want to do to put food on the table, I'll just back you up. I'll just stay home, take care of the kids, and you can do this. So when I was pregnant with our second daughter, he comes home and he'd been doing real estate for a couple of years. And he said, I think I'm going to get back into the insurance business because we're not going to be able to eat for much longer if we're just selling real estate. Because here in northern New Mexico, you were lucky if you sold maybe 2 or 3 properties a year, you know. So I told him, I said, that's good. Insurance, I think people have to have it, but I'll back you up, whatever you need me to do. So State Farm had told him when he left, they said, anywhere you go, we will open you another office. You just get back in contact with us. So he calls State Farm first. And State Farm says, well, we'd love to open you up an office anywhere except Chama. The demographics aren't good. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of people. We just don't see that you're going to be able to make it there. But if you move to Santa Fe or Albuquerque or Las Cruces or one of these bigger towns, Farmington, we'd be happy to put you back into business. Loved you as an agent. Your dad will get you going. So he comes home and talks to me, and I said, no, I've had my share living in the big city. I really don't want to live in the big city again. I said, so are there other options? So he goes, well, there's something called an independent agency. He goes, I don't know what that's about, but I'll check it out. I said, okay, well, you check it out and let me know what you need me to do. So like I say, I'm pregnant with the second daughter. So you fast forward, this is in January. She's born in June. Lord, don't let me get that wrong, because that child will never forget me if I forget the month that she's born in. So anyway, she's born in June. He says, well, the real estate office he worked at was a little small office. It was a bigger office, but his office was pretty small because it was an old house they'd remodeled. And he said, I need you to come and type letters. I've got this book about this thick, and it gives me all of the insurance companies that write New Mexico. So this kind of dates back, it kind of dates me because this is back in '89. I know, I just don't look like I've been around that long, but it's okay. I have been, I promise. So anyway, you had typewriters. You couldn't type it up on the computer. So every letter had to be typed up on the typewriter. So I came in, I'd bring the kids in, leave the oldest one at my mother-in-law's, bring the baby into the office in the carrier and put her there. And I type up these letters. I mean, hundreds of letters, LaDonna, that we sent out to companies, because all he could get to appoint him at the time was Progressive and Foremost. Progressive and Foremost are out there, and they wanted to appoint whoever they could. They were looking to grow, and they didn't matter. So he had those. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. We needed more. So I would send out letters to all of these companies, and I'd send them out. I'm always real optimistic, so we'd send out like 60 or 70 letters, and I'd ask him about a week later. I'd say, have you gotten any responses from those letters? And he would tell me, well, no, I haven't gotten, very many responses. Then he'd come home after a couple of weeks and say, well, I'm being turned down. I said, why would they turn you down? You're a great guy. You got a lot to offer. Like, they need an insurance agency in this town. And they had 3, by the way, when we started this. Okay. They had 3 little agencies here. 2 of them were captive agents and one of them was independent. These people were all like maybe middle to late 60s. So they were like, one of them, the minute he hung his sign out there and it said Ron Alcorn Insurance, their sign came down and they were like, boom, we're out of here. We just been waiting for somebody to come in so we could, people would have an insurance agent. The other 2, gradually after about a year, they kind of went by the wayside as well because they were looking to retire, but nobody wanted to buy their agencies here. So anyway, I told him, I said, just hang in there. I said, you're going to get something. So like I say, I'm always optimistic. I'm kind of a go-getter. I can't really sit still. So from the time the kids were in school, I was always volunteering at the schools. By this time we have the 3rd one, and he's doing okay, plugging along with these 2 companies. I think he eventually got Dairyland in and he was working with them, still running real estate. He had a friend that they actually went into real estate business together and kind of broke out on their own. So he tells me one day, I'm volunteering at the school. I'm cleaning houses. I've got a friend that we've got a matting and framing shop. So we're, doing art, matting and framing. Gosh, I had a friend that bought the local drugstore here. She was a pharmacist. Her husband was a physical therapist. It was hard to find help. So I told them, I'll help you out. So I had this schedule, and I had everybody kind of penciled in between the kids getting in school and volunteering at the schools and all this other stuff. So he comes home one day and he says, well, things are looking up a little bit. He said, but either you're going to have to come in and help me answer the phones, or I'm going to have to hire somebody. Well, I did all the budgeting. So I look and I'm like, well, I'll tell you one thing, you're not paying anybody to answer the phones. You're not quite that good yet. I said, but I will come in and help you answer the phones and I'll file. So I always tell everybody, it's one thing to work with your spouse. It's another thing to work across the desk, because the office we were in was literally it wasn't even 100 square feet. Maybe it was 80. And we had one little like countertop. And so we worked across from each other. And I would answer the phone. He was out showing real estate. I'd take care of any clients that came in for payments or whatever, little stuff. So I've etched out a few hours there. And I'd been there for about a year. And he goes, "You need to go get your license." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not a salesman. You're good. You sell insurance and real estate all day. I'll just answer your phone." you know. So we're coming up on 2 years in the office, and we actually moved into a little bit bigger space. And by bigger, I mean maybe it was 150 square feet. So I want you to get the idea that it was like huge. It was still kind of small. So he says, "You need to get your license." And I said, "Man, I really hated going to school. I mean, when I got out of high school, that was it. That's why I didn't go to college. I was like, I just don't do well with tests. I don't like being in the classroom, more of a visual, like hands-on kind of learner." He goes, "No, I'll get you the books and you'll do fine." So he gets me the books and I start studying and study for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, doing it at home between taking care of the kids, it's homework and all that kind of stuff. Everybody who balances a family knows what's going on, how that works. So I gradually have more and more people coming in, and they're wanting, they're wanting different types of insurance. Businesses were coming in and saying, "We want to insure this commercial insurance, or we want to do this." And I had to turn them away because I couldn't. I had a couple of friends in like Santa Fe and Albuquerque that had agencies, and I would refer them to them. So one day I'm sitting in the office. Oh, and I get my license, pass the test the first time. I come out from taking that test, and I'm telling you, it's the most nerve-wracking thing. My husband goes, "Well, how'd you do?" Because he's out in the parking lot waiting for me. And I said, "Well, I'm really, really worried because at that time, I know now when you take it, because I've taken my life and health, you go in and do it all on the computer. But this was all paper, this was the books. I don't know how long you've done it, LaDonna, but you look quite a bit younger than me, so I'm not sure. But it's, you had the books and you opened them up and you had to fill in the little thing. So we sat at a table with like 5 other people, get out my look, I fill it all in. And before we took the test, there's this woman there and we're talking, and I wasn't really nervous about it. I was like, "Yeah, I've studied and I'm good." And she goes, "So how many times have you taken the test?" And I said, "Well, this is my first time." And she goes, "Oh, honey, good luck. This is my 6th." I was like, "Oh, holy of all holies, please help me pass this test the first time. I don't want to come back." So I go in there, there's 3 men and 2 other women, and we finish, and I'm the first one that's done. And I'm like, "Oh my God, these people have all taken this test at least once or twice. I'm screwed because there's no way I could be done 30 minutes before them. They all look way more like they know what they're doing than I do." So, and back then they didn't give you the results right away. You had to wait to get them in the mail. So I go out, my husband goes, "Well, how'd you do?" He goes, "You didn't change any answers, did you?" I said, "No, you told me not to change any answers." And he goes, "That's right. Don't ever change them. Just leave them alone." I was like, "Oh, I might change 1 or 2, but," I said, "I got done for everybody else. I'm pretty sure I've won." So I get the test, get my results in the mail about 2 weeks later, and I passed. So we like went home, had a party for like, "Woohoo, this is good. I'm good. I can do this. I passed that test the first time." So anyway, so I'm turning people away. We've got stuff going on. I've got a few companies. I'm trying to remember. We'd reached out to. I always love to tell this story because I'd reached out to several companies, and one of them was Safeco. And the Safeco rep called me, and Linda Murray, love her. I hope eventually she hears this. I just love that woman. She's since retired from Safeco, but she's like one of the best reps that I had. And I remember contacting her, and she said, "Well, I've talked to everybody, and Pam, the demographics just aren't good." She said, "You're just not going to make it there." And I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. That's a nice perception, but that's not how I perceive things to be." I said, "We'll be good." Okay. So I move on to the next company. Basically the only companies that we had, like I said, we had Progressive, we had Foremost, and then we had a company that came in that was called Farmers Alliance. And do they still operate in Arkansas?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Because they were big in the Midwest. So they were big like in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and then they moved into New Mexico to try it out. Well, and we had almost everything with them, because they were great on homeowners. They would bundle with autos. They had a really good BOP, and they had little commercial policies and stuff. So we had, like, I would say 90% of our business with them. So we had a gentleman that used to come into the office all the time. Insurance people attract insurance people. So one day he's driving by. He has a second home up here. He's from Albuquerque at the time, and he said, we've got a big insurance agency in Albuquerque. And he said, "I just want to kind of throw something out there." He said, asked me about the companies and how business was. And I said, "Well, business is good, but I'm concerned because there's a lot of it I can't write because I don't have access to the companies." He goes, "Well, have you ever heard of SIAA?" I said, no, can't say that I've heard of SIA. I kind of live in my little hole up here, raising my kids, going to work and going home. And like I say, if you look up New Mexico, it's this little tiny town. And he said, well, he explained to us what it was. And I said, wow, it sounds really great. And he said, and at the time we still had our property in Oklahoma for sale. So when we moved here, we had buyers for it and we thought we were all set. And then we got moved up here and the deal fell through. So property's still sitting there like 10 or 12 years later. It's still sitting there, but we had somebody looking at it. We had another offer on the table. So his name was Carl. So I said, love Carl and Beverly, love those guys. So I said, I really think that it's something to do, but I said, right now it's just not in our budget. So Carl, he just kept plugging along. Every time he'd come to town, him and Beverly take us out to dinner, and he'd say, I just really want you to think about this. I think it'd be a great opportunity, and we'll work with you. We'll work with you, and we'll work out a budget. And I said, no, we really don't like to have to borrow money. I said, but we've got this property for sale, and if it sells, then we'll go ahead and move forward. We'll talk about it. So it looks like the property is going to sell. So my husband and I, Ron, we sit down, we talk about it, and I said, well, what do you think? And he's a little bit older than I am. Yours. I'm giving this to you now. I've worked all these years. I've done it. I feel like you've got it under control. You can grow the agency. And I was like, well, I'm just this little farm girl from a little tiny town in Oklahoma. I don't know about growing a business, but I definitely think we need more companies. So, because if you'd asked me back then, just like if you'd asked me in 85 when we got married, if I was going to be an insurance agent, I would have went, yeah, no, I don't think so. Not in my future. If you had asked me moving 10 years forward, if I was going to run a business and have employees, I would have went, yeah, I don't even know how to do that, where to start, So here he is asking me this. And I said, well, I do know that if you don't grow, you die, no matter what it is. If it's a business, it's a town, if it's your education, whatever it is, if you don't put yourself out there and you don't grow, you're not going to make it. So he said, well, if you want to do this, you want to take the agency and you want to move forward, if you feel like it's what we need to do, we need to do it. I said, okay. So the next time Carl came up, we closed on the property. And I told my husband, I said, let's not tell him. He's going to be so excited because he asks us every time, are you ready to join SIAA yet? Are you ready? So he comes up and he's like, Beverly and I, we're up here in town visiting. We want to take you guys out to dinner. And I'm like, okay. So we go sit down. And I said, Carl, guess what? It's like, what? I said, we're ready. He goes, what are you ready for? I said, we're ready to join SIAA. Like, you got me all pumped up. You still got a spot for me, right? And he was so excited. So anyway, we joined SIAA. One of the best decisions we made. I never will forget. I think I told you this part of the story. We just joined maybe a week, 2 weeks at the most. I think maybe it was a week. I was helping a neighbor with a yard sale, and my husband drives up and he says, man, I don't know who you've got on your side, but you definitely made the right decision. And he hands me a letter. And this letter is a letter from Farmers Alliance that they're pulling out of New Mexico because they weren't profitable for too many years. They just couldn't do it. They'd had too many losses. So within that year, they were going to pull back all those. They were going to non-renew all those policies that we had. And I mean, it would have put us under because we would have had nobody else to put the companies with. And SIAA from the beginning, Carl and Beverly were super supportive. The staff they had at the time that they had appointed to help everybody was supportive. And so, I told my husband, I said, dude, I believe in the power of prayer and I really think God has your back. So I said, I prayed about it before we joined and I felt like this is what we needed to do. And I said, I am really grateful that we're blessed that we did this. So with that being said, we get access to the companies. Anybody who's thinking about joining SIAA, who has ever come to me and thought about it, I always encourage them because it was a lifesaver for us. And just the support that we got was incredible. I didn't even know that type of support existed for anybody who wanted to run a business or grow in any way. So, you fast forward a little bit, we finally, how it is, you work under the SIAA, under their master codes until you can get your own subcodes so you've got enough. So guess who walks into my office Monday? Safeco rep. And she says, so Pam, it's Linda. I said, oh, Linda, I've talked to you on the phone, but it's nice to meet you in person. She goes, yeah. She says, so I was driving up here from Albuquerque and I thought, wow, there's like really nothing between. Once you leave Espanola, there's nothing between here and there, which is about 100 miles, maybe no more. Yeah, about 100 miles. And I said, yeah. And she goes, you've been sending Safeco a lot of business. And I said, well, I told you if you'd give me the chance, I would, but you just told me the demographics weren't there. I said, but sometimes God has bigger plans, so you just got to have faith. And so she laughed. Her and I became good friends. And I never will forget. She was one of my, I believe that marketing reps are super important because they just really, they can really just be your little cheerleader, and they can also get things going for you that you can't really get done. So I said, yeah, Linda, aren't you surprised? Because you thought the demographics weren't here, but look, there's more here than you can see. So we would go to the SIA meetings, that you have once or twice a year, and they give out awards and all that kind of stuff. And I would go, and I would always sit in the back because I'm just not a front row kind of person. I like to sit in the back and just absorb everything. So she had told me, she says, "What, this meeting that you're coming to, next month," she said, "I really would like for you to sit in the front. I don't know, there's always probably 7,500 people there." I said, "No, Linda, I'm sitting in the back. That way I got a fast escape in case somebody's picking on me or something, I can leave." We'd always joke. So I go to this meeting, and they were all, like I say, they would give out awards, and she gets up there and she talks, and she's talking about this agent that's like made the most growth. And I'm just back there and I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. Like, whoever this is, they did a really good job. And so she holds up this plaque and she goes, "Pam Alcorn, can you please come to the front?" And I was like, "Me? You want me to come to the front?" "No, I'm going out the back. I don't do awards." And there's no way my husband would keep track of all the growth stuff. I just wrote business. He's always done like all the books and kept track of all of that. And he just kind of keeps it to himself, I guess, because I didn't have any idea. I mean, I just knew I was busy writing business. And literally it was just him and I, that was it. We didn't have any employees. So people started asking me after that meeting how I had grown that much, what did I do? I must have had really great employees. And I was like, well, I don't have any employees. I'm not at that spot where I feel like I can afford them, but this is how we've grown. And I said, my very first thing was, you always treat people the way you want to be treated. I said, I grew up with that from my dad. I said, that was drilled into me over and over. And I said, it's really true. As long as you treat people the way you want to be treated, I just don't feel like you can go wrong. So, just get kind of back on track with SIA a little bit. We actually are under a different person now because Carl and Beverly ended up retiring. And then their SIA master agency was bought out by an agency that's our master agency out of Arizona. And Dan Skinner is the head of that. So I'll give him a little plug because Dan Skinner, bless his heart, is an awesome man. Because without getting into too much of it, there were some struggles that went through when Carl and Beverly sold their agency with what went on with the master agency. So Dan called all of the agents and said, we're buying this part of the master agency. Will you please be willing to stay? Because there were some of us that were trying to get out. If we come and meet with you. And I said, sure. And honestly, LaDonna, I didn't think that he would come up here. I told Dan this story. I really didn't think he'd walk through my doors because people promise to come see me and they never do because they're like, Chalmers, where? So I fly into Albuquerque and it's 3 hours north. I got to drive 3 hours to see this woman? Nah, we'll just call her on the phone. So, and I've lived up here so long, I'm used to traveling and driving, but I forget everybody. Some people live in the city, 30 minutes is a long ways to go somewhere. For me, it's like, wow, that's a hop, skip, and a jump. You're only 30 minutes away. Good,
Exactly.
So Dan came and met with us, and I liked him right off the bat. Just gave me a whole new, I loved SIA when I joined it. Some things that happened and wasn't too happy, but then I got under Dan and I was like, wow, these people are really amazing. All the support that is there, all of just everything that they can give you access to. It's just like a family. It's just a group of family that's there for you. Like this morning, they've got Richard is one of my guys at SIA that I deal with on commercial stuff. And I call him my walking encyclopedia of insurance. This man, I swear, he's had an agency. He's worked in an agency. One day I'm trying to get a quote for a lumber mill over in Taos. And so I call Richard and I'm like, what do you know about Pennsylvania lumbermen? And he starts laughing. And I said, let me guess, Richard, you've worked for Pennsylvania lumbermen. He goes, yeah, actually, I was the inspector and I would go inspect. I can tell. He tell me, it doesn't matter what you ask this man. He's done it. He's just amazing and super friendly. Will give you any information. So anything that I need help with finding a market for. And he's like, where do you find these people? And I said, well, Richard, I'm so good. They just call me now. They just call me and say, can you write this? Or can you write this? And I said, and of course, it's never the easy stuff. It's never the, the little shop that only sells, gifts. That's a retail shop. They sell hot dogs in the room next door. So then they've got food involved, and he's like, yeah, it just amazes me. And I said, well, I need help finding a carrier to write this. And they always pull through. SIAA with, with Dan and his group, I just can't even tell you. And I would presume with the group that yours is OAA, is
Yes.
that, is it? And it's a little bit confusing because like there's SIAA, right? The big
Right.
company with Papado and, the big guys. And then there's my group is SIAA because they're
Right.
Southwest Insurance Agents Alliance. So like you represent SIA, but then at least you've got a different initials, OAA, for
Right.
yours. But we've got, so SIAA is Dan Skinner's group, Southwest Insurance Agents Alliance. And they are just, like I say, I presume all the groups, I hope they're all as amazing as my master agency is, because I mean, talking to you, I know if I had to deal with you, we'd have that same relationship. I would get anything that I needed, but they are just agents who watch this podcast who are thinking about joining. I say it's the best investment you could ever make. And had I known how good it was going to be and how much it would have fueled our growth, I would have definitely done it the 2 years before when Carl walked into my office and asked me to. So whether you're an independent agent and you just need that access to the other companies, or you're a captive agent and you're looking at becoming an independent agent and you're going to need that support, and you need that because you've got to have something that's going to help you fuel that growth. I can't imagine. I mean, my husband, when people find out he started the agency from scratch, back in '89, not a lot of agents do that anymore. It's just too hard. But if you were going to do it, you've definitely got to have somebody like SIA where you've got access, because not only do you have access to companies, you have to understand that they are going to give you access to products such as agency management systems. There's a system called Lola that we use, which you're probably familiar with. I mean, there's just all of these tools that you will be able to put into your toolbox that you can reach in there and pull out for whatever you're going to need to fix or write or grow. And that's the best way I know how to describe it, is SIA being all those tools that you need in your toolbox to put in there to help you to grow. I mean, I don't know how people would do it. Independent agents do it without them. I really don't.
So how long have you been with SIAA again?
Let me see. I'm looking over here. I have a little award that says 15 years that they give out when you go, when you could go to the meetings in person. They would give you an award. So I'm thinking that's been back like 2 years ago. So I guess I've been with them about 17 years.
Okay.
And we've been in business. We've been with them 17, maybe 18 years, because we've been in business 30 years. Yeah, when Samantha was born, that was the year. No, that was the year my husband. Yeah, that was the year he started the agency, and she's 31. So it'll be 32 years this year that we've been in business, that he started the business. But 17 years that we've been a part of SIAA.
Wow. I just love your story and just great information. I mean, it's really important because a lot of agents don't think that a company is going to go away. I mean, and you were
Right.
faced with that with Farmers Alliance. And
Right.
so to have some, when you're sitting there going, what am I going to do now? It's invaluable to have somebody step in and help you with that situation.
Right.
So I think it's great that you shared that story because we kind of take the companies for granted and they're always going to be there and stay in our cities and in our states and that kind of thing. But there is always a movement with the carriers and that kind of thing. So what did they do for you, SIA? What did they do for you? Did they help you consolidate that book or move that into one of their partner carriers to save that business?
Oh, absolutely. They had a whole group that when we originally joined with the original group, and it was Carl, they had a whole employee group at their office. And so what I did was I would just app up, and this was before you could type them up on the computer, so I had to hand fill out all these Accord forms and I had to send them over. And I mean, I dealt mainly with personal lines. That's my husband was State Farm. He did personal lines, but he also did a lot of like life and annuities, that kind of stuff, but never a lot of commercial. So I apped up all of that stuff on Accord forms. And I still remember Laurie was her name that would help me with all the personal line stuff. I would fax it all over to her. She would get it all quoted. And that's one of the ways that I was able to meet those numbers to get the subcodes, because she knew which companies to put it with. And Safeco was one of those companies. So we put it with Safeco right away. A few of them, I think we had Hartford, and it was a little while before we got to Traveler Subco, but Safeco was the big one that we had. So And then on the commercial line side, I get some of my commercial stuff that I had with them, I had to send over to another guy, Mark, who I'm still, insurance people you just stay friends with forever whenever they help you out, So I still know him. He works at a different agency, but I call him every once in a while. But I always remember Mark, because I got those Accord forms, and I don't know about every other agent, but they're not my favorite thing to fill out. So I would fill them out, and I'm sure I just did like, halfway decent job. And Mark would send them back over to me. And he was kind of harsh. He would call me up and he'd say, so you need to refill out that application. You missed a couple of spots and I'm putting you to the bottom of the pile. And I was like, say what? The bottom of the pile? But I need this in a few days. And he's like, well, then you should have filled it out right the first time. So I'm a pretty quick learner because my dad kind of did the same thing. I'm the oldest one. There's just me and my sister. My dad was in construction and he was always doing stuff. And my sister would have to go and help him clean up. And we'd sweep and sweep and sweep for hours. We'd sweep this big old building, spend like 2 hours, probably felt like all day as a kid. And my dad would never say anything because he'd show you how to do it and you'd do it. And he'd be like, okay, we're done. We're going out to play now. And he would say, nope. And I'm like, what? He goes, you didn't do it right the first time. I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. You didn't do it right the first time. Why didn't you stop me halfway through and tell me I was doing it wrong? He's like, because you'll just learn this way. And it was true, you really learned if you had to do it again. So this kind of came into play with the applications, I would tell Mark, what's not filled out? What? And he would say, well, only half of it. And I'm like, well, where do I get that information? He goes, you got to call your client. And I said, I got to call my client, ask them how much they make a year. Like, that's really personal information. I struggled with that a little bit, getting people's personal information. So I had to kind of like just work on myself and get over that and know that I wasn't being nosy. It was just something I had to have to get their stuff. I mean, I have no problem with it now. I can just go right down the list. But that was huge. Yeah. So that was the things you learn. So, that was huge on my part, helping me, because then I grew in commercial lines and I learned a lot from Mark. I mean, not only did SIAA give me access to companies, I mean, that's what I'm saying. They have the people that if you don't know a lot about commercial or you don't know a lot about a certain kind of personal lines, then they will help you. They've got people within the organization that are going to help train you on that. And you're not paying for it. I mean, you're paying for it because you joined, but what I mean is it's not like these classes that you go out and take and they're super expensive and you're paying in more. This is all a part of what you're getting as your membership. And it's invaluable. I mean, really it is. That's what they brought to the table with me. They helped me move that book of business. There's been other books that, you'll see they have book rolls or they're going to help you consolidate a book of business to another company. They're super beneficial in that because there's a lot of that information and a lot of things companies will do for you that you don't have access to if you're not a part of SIAA, because you'll get it. I've talked to other agents and they'll say, well, how did you get access to that? Like Safeco has a loyalty rewrites program, but it's only available to SIAA agents. So, it's like, I tell them, well, because I forget sometimes and I'm like, well, I don't know. I thought Safeco had it to everybody. And they'll be like, well, no, they didn't allow it. They don't allow us to do that. And so I'll call Dan or Lindsay, his daughter, I'll email them and they'll be like, shh, that's only available to you because you're an SIAA agent. But you can give them our phone number if they want to join and call, So yeah, there's just so much. I wish that people, and I think that if you're already an SIAA member, you really need to, if you don't know everything that they give you access to, you need to talk to somebody like Dan or LaDonna or whoever your master agent person is, because talk to them before you do anything, because it's probably available through SIAA and you just don't know about it because there's so much there. I'm even guilty. I don't always get on the library, and look up, like, even when I talked to Richard this morning, he goes, did you go into Market Finders? And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting in there right now. I'm looking it up. He's like, okay, well, here's this company. Oh, but don't contact this one because you don't have access to them yet, or find this one, call these guys for something. They'll be willing to help you. But I mean, it's just, there's so much information to me on that website. I mean, there's CE that you're pay like, what is it? $1.73 a month per employee or something. I mean, it's super ridiculous. It's so cheap, so you got access to continuing education. I mean, I think you've even got access to, if you've got a life and health license, there's a company on there that you can send over health insurance or life insurance stuff to, which I I do life insurance, haven't gotten too involved in health, but I probably need to check them out for people because we're getting more and more. The more we grow, the more people come in and they just want to shop in one spot, which is what we want people to do. We want you to come in here and say, can you help me with this, this, and this? But I'm just saying, if you're getting a divorce, we cannot help you with that. And if you're an SIA member, you can't help them with it either. They need to go find an attorney, because I've been asked that before. It's crazy. Everybody who's an insurance agent, if you've done it long enough, it's like you're a counselor, you know. Well, can I come sit at your desk and shut your door and maybe you can tell me what to do here? And I'm like, no, I just can't. You're gonna have to find somebody else to help you with that. But SIA can help you with, I'd say 98% of everything else that you need help with.
I think a lot of agents too, see you're a rural agent where you're at there in New Mexico. And I think a lot of agents think, well, I'm only restricted to my own geographic area where I'm out of. So
Right.
I know you talked a little bit about how you got customers all over the place. You want to expand
I,
on how
yeah,
you've
I'd
gone
be happy to
about doing that?
expand on that. So same person, Mark, to help me with commercial lines, tells me one day, why don't you have your Colorado license? And I said, and here again, it's just ignorance. I said, well, I didn't know I could get a Colorado license. He goes, you can get a license wherever you want. In my mind, I just thought you had to be in that state, like you had to have a physical location. And I said, well, I don't know. Why would I want a Colorado license? He goes, duh, you're on the Colorado border. Like, and I said, well, now that you talk about it, people do tend to leave and they'll say, can you write me in Colorado? Because we're just 50 miles away. We really want to retain you. So that kind of triggered my brain to kind of think outside the box. And so I went ahead and got my non-residence Colorado license. And then I had a friend in Oklahoma who was a captive agent. And he said, he called me one day and he says, there's a lot of commercial stuff that I just can't write. And he said, I said, well, wait a minute, you're in Oklahoma. Like, I'm in New Mexico. Surely in all of Oklahoma, you know somebody you can call besides me. And he goes, I really don't. I've tried this a few times and it just didn't work out well. He said, but if I can refer you business. So went online, got my non-residence license for Oklahoma for the agency and for myself. And I said, sure, send them over. So people would call, businesses. I said, I'm not doing any personal lines. That's your job. I said, but I'll help you with the commercial stuff you can't write. So he would send commercial people to me and they needed, their businesses insured. And I mean, that's really what kind of triggered me starting to think outside the box. Then I had the same thing. It was an underwriter on commercial side that had just wasn't happy with her agent in Arizona. And she said, I know you don't want to do any personal lines really in Arizona, but she said, I've got a couple of people that need, she was an underwriter for RPS, which is a brokerage that's offered through, I found them through, SIAA. And she said, I go to my son's baseball team and there's a couple of people that have businesses and they just can't find agents to write it. And she goes, I know we can do it. So if you can get your non-residence license, you can send it over. And I said, well, yeah, but there's other people in Arizona that write for RPS. I know there is. Like, I don't understand. And she said, I know, but listen, it's just hard to find somebody good that you can talk to and you can get to respond. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go ahead and, so I drove out to Arizona, met with a couple of businesses because from here it's only 8 hours. Like I said, most people probably be like, oh my God, 8 hours. Why didn't you just get on a plane? But remember, people, I got to drive 2 hours to the nearest airport, get there an hour before. Get off the airport, find my luggage that they hopefully didn't lose. Yeah, I don't mind driving. I'm telling you, a lot of miles on my car, but I don't mind. So I drive to Arizona, get my non-residence license before I go out there, of course. Go out there, meet with people. Met with a friend that was a real estate agent. Same thing. She wanted to refer customers for personal line stuff. And I said, well, okay, well, that was another nice thing because then I could talk to SIA about this. I can say, hey, these people want me to get my non-residence license in Arizona, but if I do this, can you guys help back me up for if I'm going to need X, Y, and Z? And they're like, oh, totally. Yeah, we'll help you with whatever. So that's the thing that you've got to remember too, is you've just got to think outside the box because yeah, I'm in this little tiny town and I think I told you this story. So I go to an SIA meeting and Dan Skinner's been up here a couple of times. And again, there's a lot of people and I'm kind of sitting at a table in the back and he starts telling this story and he goes, he's talking about how anybody can do it. And we've got these new agencies that have joined and you just need to keep it up and don't give up. And he goes, I'm going to give you an example. And he's like, he starts talking and he goes, so I have this agent that's in a small town. I still don't click. Sometimes I'm just kind of slow probably. So he's like, I got this agent. She's in a small town. And, he goes, I just have to tell you, if she can do it, anybody can. And I'm like sitting back there and I'm listening to the story and I'm like, wow, I need to meet this person after this is over because we're going to have a lot in common. Of course we are, because it's me. So I said, he says, so anyway, he tells me he's telling the people, he goes, yeah, and I'm driving up to see this agent. And on my way there, I'm thinking, there is nothing. I leave this little town, Espanola, and there is literally, I'm telling you people, there is nothing on the road between. I'm thinking half the places I don't even have cell service. I hope I don't break down. The closer I get to where her office is, I'm like 30 miles, 40 miles out. And I'm like, there, I just don't know where this agent is finding this business because there is literally nothing here. He goes, so then I get into go through one little town, TA, he goes, and I'm getting closer. I get into Chama and there's like a grocery store and there's like a Dairy Queen and a gas station and a hotel. I still haven't gotten to her office yet. And he goes, I'm getting closer. And he goes, by the time I get to her office, I walk in, I sit down, introduce myself. And the first thing I tell her is, where are you getting this business? Are you like, are they under the rocks? They're live people, right? Like these people really exist that you're insuring. I was like, well, of course they exist. I wouldn't make them up, you know? And he said, so by this time he's telling the story, I like know who he's talking about. I can just feel myself turning like 3 shades of red, going up because I'm like, oh God, please don't tell people where I'm from, because they come and they're like, it's just this little tiny town. It's beautiful, but what do people do here? People come all the time. We have tour buses before COVID, of course, of people from Japan. We've got people come from all, because we've got an old time train. They come up here to ride the train. You have all these Japanese that show up in their cowboy boots and their cowboy hats because it's kind of like an old West town and they just love it, so they want to be a part of it. And but Dan was just such a hoot because he was like, we're just so happy to have her on board because she's just such a good example. I don't think of myself that way. I just think, here I am. I've done this. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I tell people that all the time. Listen, if I can do this, whatever it may be, member of Rotary and something will come up and I tell them, listen, if I can do it, you can do it. Because I honestly think that you can. If you've just got, I think if you have faith in yourself, faith in God, and you're not afraid of hard work and losing some sleep, you can be successful no matter what you do. I mean, I've got 3 grown daughters. I said, I don't care if you're the trash man, because I am so appreciative of the trash man that picks up my trash every week. I said, I don't care if you want to walk dogs. I don't care if you want to be the CEO of Google or whatever. I said, you can do whatever you want to do, but you're going to have to put some hard work behind it. And you're just going to have faith, and you're going to have a lot of prayer, and then you can just do anything. So that's what I told Dan. I said, people came up and talked to me after that. I said, it's really not a big deal. I said, anybody can do it. You just got to do some hard work, some research, and you got to kind of think outside the box sometimes. And definitely right now, with everything that the state that the world is in with COVID and the pandemic and people staying at home. I mean, the stay-at-home orders and COVID, I think, kind of hit in March of last year. Our business, my bookkeeper came to me this year and she goes, do you realize that you grew the most your second quarter of last year? I said, I'm not surprised. And she goes, why? And I said, because when COVID hit and they started shutting stuff down, I did a lot of praying. I was like, okay, God, whatever it takes to get us through this. Okay.
Right.
I said, and I really had a peace that everything was going to be okay. And I said, we did grow. And we've helped people grow their businesses. And I've helped other people that have had struggles. Okay, let's sit down and talk about it and think outside the box. Because the other thing that I'm a really strong believer in that I feel like SIAA represents as well is we're here to help each other. So no matter what it is, I'm here to help you. You're here to help me. I don't care whether you're in insurance or you're the restaurant down the street or the coffee shop, or you've got kids in school and now they're having to learn virtual and you're trying to figure out how to do that and you need a computer. Let's go to Rotary and ask them. Let's have you. I've got a gal now, my neighbor, that comes in here twice a week. She's going to college. She graduated in May and she does not get good internet service at her house. And so I was talking to her one day and she goes, yeah, it's really been kind of rough. Like it just keeps timing out. And I said, why aren't you at my office? I've got great internet service now. And she goes, well, I don't know. And I said, well, I've got a computer. She goes, no, I've got a laptop. And I said, I got 2 spare offices that don't even get used. I said, get your butt up here twice a week and use the internet service at my office. I mean, I'll do it for whoever asks because that's whether you're in a small town, you're in a big community, you've got to help each other. You've got to step up to the plate and just help each other out with whatever. And as long as you're willing to help somebody and kind of pay it forward, I figure you really just can't go wrong. And I feel like SIAA is a representation of that as well, because they've helped me so much. I've seen other agents that they've helped. I've retained a couple of friends that have agencies that I met through SIAA. One's in Farmington and one's in Las Cruces. So opposite ends of the state, both have the same stories with SIAA. You know, both women run agencies. You know, men run agencies too. We'll help you guys too. We're not discriminatory. Doesn't matter. There's a lot of great men out there that run agencies. I just happen to know these two women that took advantage of it. And I'll take that back. I do have one gentleman from Rio Rancho, and he was at an SIAA, one of our big meetings a couple of years ago, maybe probably even 4 years ago now. And he was a captive agent, and he came to talk to me and said, what should I do? And I've had this captive agency for a while. I don't know, 20 or 30 years. It was a long time. And this is what I'm thinking of doing, is going out on my own. And I said, I really don't think that you'll ever regret it. And I gave him my story, and we chatted, ended up sitting together at lunch and all that kind of stuff. And now he's a member. His agency's growing great. It's growing. He's got grown kids. So his daughter, I think it's his daughter and two sons, work in the agency with him now, which support he couldn't support with the captive, but now he can support them. And they're just like, and they've called me, the daughter has called me a couple of times, and you know, for advice. And she's helped me with some stuff too. Like, she had me on hold, and I was like, where'd you get that on hold music? I love it. And she goes, oh, it's through Captive Audience. Here's the number. I found it through SIAA. And I said, I guess I need to get on the website a little more, because I didn't see it on there. Great product. So you find out stuff. It's just, you know, helpful in so many ways.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today for this episode of Coffee Talk. Love your story. I know a lot of others are going to be able to resonate, and hopefully, you know, by them hearing your podcast with today, they will start to realize their dreams and take that leap of faith and pay it forward and just get started. That's the main
Let's get started.
right? Get started.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's about taking those action steps, putting one foot in front of the other. And, you know, we're all here to help each other. We're more than happy to help. That's the great thing about the organization. We're a family, like you said. So if you have any questions, you know, everyone's pretty happy to help with whatever concern or whatever. It's just about getting over that fear and taking that step and moving forward. So
that's right. No fear. I have a saying. We have it printed on t-shirts, and it goes something like, I can't even remember now that I said that, but it's something like, be the change, be fearless in everything you do. It all begins with you. Because that's right. No, you just got to get rid of the fear, move forward. I mean, I see here on your little background thing, it has a cup of coffee, which makes me think I'm probably going to have coffee after we're done, because I've been staring at it, but it says a forward. I'm like, thanks a lot, LaDonna. Now I need coffee. A forward thinking podcast. And I'm like, forward thinking. I love that, because that's what you've got to be. And I feel like that kind of encompasses what SIAA is, as far as they are very forward thinking, and thinking outside the box is forward thinking. So I agree.
Yeah. Well, again, we appreciate it. I'm so grateful to have met you. I'll have to consider you a friend now. And,
well, absolutely.
And give you a call here and there and see how things are going. And please also stay in touch. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, can they get a hold of you?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Ask you questions?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anybody. If anybody's got questions, yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions. They can get a hold of me. Do you want me to give my information, or do you want to post it somewhere?
Yeah, that's fine. You can go ahead and give it, and then I'll also post it in the description.
Perfect. Yeah, you can go to our website, which is www.ron, insurance.com. And it's got a link on there. It says info at, and you can email me, or you can just email me at Pamela at PAMELA at ronalcorninsurance.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Pamela.
Thank
it's
you.
always great to have them have that information, to hear it from you. They speak with us, but it's really great to, you know, hear it from the agents themselves who have went through the experience. And you've been doing this for 17 years with SIAA, and, you know, what, 3 decades?
Yeah, a little while, almost. I know I don't look old enough to be around 3 decades, but
Oh, you You look like you.
I tell myself that every day. I'm 56 now, and I'm like, yeah, I'm looking good. Just keep skiing, keep, snowshoeing, keep doing what I do to go outside. So
Yeah, be full.
no matter how old you are, you got to always tell yourself you look young. Look in the mirror and go, yeah, I look good. I look good.
You look 30 to me. So
see, you are a kindred spirit. I knew it.
yes, yeah, you look definitely 30 to me. So
Well,
it's
thank you
all
so
that
much,
activity.
Lana.